So how do you go from a scrappy founder to a capable CEO?
Welcome to Fordify Live with your host, Saeks.
Well, who better than to talk about this subject than someone who's helped literally hundreds of business owners that are making 7 figures go to 8 figures and beyond. You can Google him if you're listening to the podcast on the replay. That's the Business Growth Show. I'm speaking with Brett Gilliland, and his website is growwithelite, ELITE.com. So, Brett, welcome to today's episode of Fordify Live. We're live right now on LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube and a few other sources. Thanks for joining us.
I love being here, Ford. Thank you very much. I'm excited to talk about this important topic. I love your energy, and I think your show is great. So let's dive in. Whatever you want to talk about.
All right. So in the green room, we were talking earlier about some of the challenges organizations are having. They start out as a scrappy entrepreneur. They have certain skill sets to get them to a certain level of position, and then they have to get to a capable CEO. And I know for myself, having 17 companies, my largest company had 140 employees. And it was at the height, it was making 10 million, which is not, 100 million, but certainly, not bad for an entrepreneur. And what I found was I had to have a really good director of operations. I had to have a good CFO and a COO and a CTO, or it wouldn't have ran, because I was that scrappy entrepreneur that wasn't a capable CEO. Even though I held the title of, I had the initials, it didn't make me that way. So is that what you've seen? And for those of you listening, I just want to read just a little bit of his bio, just so for positioning. So he's the founder and CEO of Elite Entrepreneurs, a company that specializes in giving business owners that are $1 million plus the knowledge, the processes, and the tools to grow to 10 million and beyond. He's an expert in organizational development, leadership, strategy, and he spent 10 years helping a company that most of us would be familiar with, Infusionsoft, which is now a different name, go from 7 million in revenue to over 100 million. When he's not working, of course, he spends his time with his beautiful wife, Sharon, and his 8 kids. So that's just a quick little intro for those of you who don't know who he is. Again, go to growwithelite.com. All right, so let's go back to the original topic. How does someone do that when they're like me, when they're a scrappy CEO and they need to become a capable CEO?
Yeah, and they're capable already, but they're capable business building CEOs. There's a difference, right? Capable scrappy founders know how to get their product market fit just right. They figure out sales. They figure out how to market this thing. They figure out how to scale their offering, whether it's a service or a product. How do you deliver that consistently at a high enough quality for people to be leaving great Google reviews or Yelp or whatever, right?
Right.
They figure out how to build a business, and then the business outgrows their capability to hold it all together themselves. And so they have to do new things. And that's where I talk about business building. They got to figure out how to set a vision. They got to figure out how to build a team. They got to align a growing number of people to take targeted, coordinated action towards a common objective together. And that's the trick. There's more complexity, there's more people, and now it can't all rely on them as a single point of expertise, or the genius who has a few helpers around them. They have to figure out how to actually build something beyond their own ability to hold it all together. And that's a tricky spot for a lot of business owners.
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, I've got a friend of mine who's a large franchisee, multi-unit owner, owns over 30 of a certain brand, and he'll probably be listening to this, so I won't use his name. But he's at that same stage. He's built an organization beyond what an entrepreneur can do, and he needs duplicatable, sustainable processes where you train people to standard and you help them execute, and where they know the difference between. Again, I would say, people are smart in one of 3 areas, right, Brett? They're good at making the product or service, delivering the product or service. They're good at marketing or sales, or they're good at operations, which could be finance, accounting, all the different things there. So, but they're never good at all 3, right? And so they got to try to hire their weaknesses. And so when you work with organizations, where do you start to identify? And before you answer, I think the biggest problem, at least I'm using myself as the poster child, is delusion. I mean, I think that I've been delusional.
Say more about that.
Yeah,
I think you're right. I think that's a big challenge for a lot of people. But what do you mean by delusion for a business owner?
Yeah, I think that they're delusional on what they think they can do and how long things take, and how complex certain processes are. I think I probably underestimate how long it takes, and I overestimate how much I can get done within a given time. Now, I know I heard that somewhere over the years as a keynote speaker, but it really stuck with me because I have a critical thinking brain and I can solve problems. Because I already understand how to solve the problem, I feel like the problem's fixed. But that's a far cry from actual implementation and accountability.
Yes, I used to work for a guy that was, a generation older than me, and he would love to use the term "the devil is in the details." Right? The devil's in the details. Like we have these ideas, and we oversimplify sometimes as entrepreneurs. Like, yep, I see it, I get it, and we've already got it solved in our mind, so therefore it's as good as done. But the devil is in the details, and we got to go work through all those details, or have a team who can help us do that. Ford, I'd love to say something about the name of our business, not to promote our business, because it actually has meaning. Elite Entrepreneurs is the name of our business, but it's about the people that we're talking about. It's that about 3% of business owners that ever make it to $1 million in revenue to begin with. Right? Somewhere between 95 and 97% of businesses that start in the US do not make it to $1 million in revenue. They do not cross that threshold. And so these about 3% of businesses that make it, they're the elite. It doesn't make them better than, it just means they're in new territory that most people never get to. Most business owners certainly don't get to that spot. And so they're dealing with new challenges, and they don't have a lot of reference points. Now, sure, there's plenty of groups out there with rooms full of these types of business owners. But unless you plug into a community like that, you're just dying out there all on your own trying to figure stuff out. That is a new set of circumstances and a new set of challenges for any business owner that's crossing over that threshold of $1 million. Now, the $1 million isn't really the answer. It's the team that it represents. And in most businesses, especially in a service-based business, that involves scaling a group of people. And so you've got, let's call it 8 or 10 people, or maybe you got 12 or 15, but you've got a group of people now, and they're all still looking at you as the business owner to give them direction, to make sure that we're doing it right. Like, you're like the lone genius with a bunch of helpers around you. And unless you figure out how to organize the work in a way that you can really give ownership to some other people, then you're never going to be able to scale past some of that initial transition point. Right there around 8 or 10 people, it gets really challenging. So I think the delusional part that you talked about is key, because we tell ourselves, oh, I'll just bring somebody in to do that. But at the end of the day, if you haven't created some organization to the structure, and you don't know how to set a clear vision with your team that they can buy into, you're just going to be herding cats, or you're still going to be the single point of failure when it comes to all the decisions that are going to be coming back to you, and you become the bottleneck. So that's the single biggest hurdle for these elite entrepreneurs, is learning how to grow this thing beyond their superhuman capability to will stuff forward.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I mean, and I'm in that category. I mean, I've made millions of dollars in my career, and I was really good at marketing and sales, and I was good at delivering whatever the product and service was, but I've always struggled with the growth part. And it's not what you earn, it's what you keep. I mean, my first year when I had a sporting goods company, my first year that I hit $1 million was like 1984 or something like that, a long time ago, before most of our listeners were born. And I was so excited. I went to my controller and I'm like, hey, I've sold $1 million and I'm a millionaire. And they're like, no, hold on there, Skippy. You sold $1 million. You took home $16,000 as a paycheck, and you're $150,000 in debt. I mean, it's not what you make, it's what you keep. And, even me in my speaking business is mostly profit. I mean, I go out and do a keynote, my fees aren't cheap. I start at 25 grand and go up from there. That's profit, but they're not paying me for the 45 minutes of the keynote. They're paying me for the 50 years of strategic business solutions and the takeaways and the value. And then, of course, you go to the agency, and I run a digital marketing agency. And let's say I sell a project for $50,000. Well, by the time I'm done, maybe I end up with 10,000, whatever. But then but that was after months of work and all the labor and all the overhead. And it's like, which one's really more profitable? So it's not the top end revenue. It's also the profitability. And I think that a lot of organizations I know when I work with people, I'm an EO member, so I am an EO forum, entrepreneur organization, and I'm in several groups. I'm on the board of a couple associations. And when I meet with business owners, it's surprising to me how they don't even really know what their chart of accounts is. They know what their P&L is, right? They use the P&L as their report card, kind of like their dashboard, their gas gauge. But they really don't understand their balance sheet, their income statement, cash flow, inventory turns, ratios. And there's a difference between understanding them and then actually, how do you affect them, right? But I think where I was going with that is just the fact that as the business grows over that $1 million mark, I think it does they need new skills, right? They need new skills and they need new people to get to the next level. Is that where you come in and help them?
Yes, absolutely. And to go back to your friend who has all those franchise locations, there's a difference between mastering a single location model, right? Like here's a business model that works in a location, and you could probably only do so much revenue. The revenue might be capped for a single location at one of those franchises. And so he has 30 of them. Well, that's great. But it's really 30 individual franchises that he owns, not one business with one big team. And there is a difference there, right? And so he may not have to learn the same level of, I'll call it the same level of leadership team building as a business with, one location, but that has 300 people at it, right? Instead of 30 locations with 300 people at it, maybe there's one location, one business, 300 people. That's a different organization building thing. And so you have to look at it. Some of what I'll say today, or some of the things we'll talk about, may have little relevance to a franchise owner who's just trying to get as many units in place to crank out the model that they have set up. That's a different game than having let's say a service business with one location that just has an army of people, right? That's a different thing. So I would say the thing that matters for any business, whether it's a franchise or not, is to get really clear about where we're going together as a team and enroll your people as much as possible in that process. Some of the things we like to say are when people don't have any weigh in, there's no buy-in, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes as visionary entrepreneurs, we come in and we're like, I see it. This is what we're going to do. And we just start charging down a path and hope that people come after us. And we really need to evolve in our leadership to enroll people in a co-creative process to say, here's where we can go together. And if your team members are saying that with you, you've kind of won half the battle, right? You don't have to go back and try to get them all to follow along anymore. They're the ones creating it with you. So a lot of what we do is teach business owners how to go from the one man or one woman wrecking crew that makes it all happen to the orchestrator or the drafter of vision with their team, such that everybody's excited about the purpose that we have together. Everybody fits with the values that we've articulated, and we have crystal clarity on the objective oriented mission. Like, here's the mountain we're going to go take together over the next 3 years. And when we have that kind of clarity, now we can align resources and everybody's pulling together. So that applies to a single franchise location. It applies to, multi-office, one business with lots of offices. It doesn't matter the size or scope of the organization. Everybody wants to be led towards a common outcome. And our job is to switch from entrepreneurial thinking to strategic leader thinking in that regard.
And what are some of the ways that you help someone go? So I agree with the premise. I mean, when I go and I'm working with a client or a keynote, I always start with mindset, strategies, and tactics, right? The mindset comes first. If they don't have an open mindset and they're not open to new ideas, they're not a critical thinker, then all the strategies and tactics in the world won't work. And then you go to strategies and, okay, what direction, how are we going to get there? And then tactical, who's going to do what on a Wednesday morning at 9 a.m., right? So when how do you help an entrepreneur or a client or someone who's part of your membership community or one of your coaching clients? How do you help them? What's a basic journey that you're going to go? Not like the whole thing, because obviously, it's a short show, but where do you take them from and to?
Yeah, so we're going to start with a foundation. I've already sort of referenced these elements, but we're going to start with setting the vision, which to us means get clear on purpose, values, and mission. So that's the foundational piece. From that, we're going to move to mission goals and mission strategies. We're going to get a lot more clarity on what does it mean to win and how are we going to get there. And then we're going to use things like meeting rhythm and a system of ownership and accountability with every role in the company that says, here's my contribution, my clearly defined responsibilities, and how I contribute to the whole. So we get really clear on what the whole looks like, and then we get super dialed in on what every person in the business, what every role in the business owns as part of that effort to go chase after the whole. So anybody in your world, Ford, especially coming out of EO, I'm familiar enough with EO to know the entrepreneurial operating system, Gino Wickman's traction, all of that stuff is well embedded there.
Yeah, they are. It is.
Yeah. And so, what I do is similar to that. We have our own scaling method. So we teach to that and coach to that. But it's about getting clarity of vision. It's about building the team to go achieve that vision. And it's about securing the resources to make sure we have the fuel to go make it happen.
What do you see moving forward with the challenges facing businesses today, inflation and supply chain issues and price and hiring staff? What do you say to a person that's in the process of creating that vision and navigating those changes to help them prepare for the future? What are some of the questions or the things that you would share with our viewers and our listeners to help them self-reflect on where they're at so they know where they could go?
Yeah, I love that question, Ford. I'm a huge Jim Collins fan. And so I'm going to start with something that Jim always says. He says that the great companies, he talks about built to last, or the great companies have disciplined people engaging in disciplined thought, taking disciplined action. And so it's more a development of a capability, an organizational capability, especially with the leaders, that we're going to be engaging in strategic thought and conversation. Then we're going to organize our resources and go execute. And we're going to do that in a repeated or rhythmic sort of way. So when you say, how do you prepare people? It's not a one and done thing. So we've got to teach them some sort of structure. And there's so many good structures out there. I don't need to promote my structure necessarily. We have one, but some sort of structure that organizes a team to engage in this critical thinking. How do we engage in critical thinking as one team instead of like siloed functional experts who lead each of their respective functions, but they don't come together to go address the market in a cohesive strategic way, right? So we want to arm them with some tools and some process around strategic thinking to understand and then address the market in a way that increases their chances of competing successfully. And then we're going to do that in a rhythmic fashion. So we're going to do annual planning, quarterly planning, right? We're going to get really clear. Once in a while, we're going to look up from all the day-to-day hustle, and we're going to reorient to true north, right? Is that still true north? Is that where we're going together? Okay, that hasn't changed. Then what about our strategies to get there? Are they still relevant? And Ford, I think you'll agree with this. Relevance is a hugely important term when trying to think about how to deal with a chaotic or changing market. How do we maintain relevance? That is the bottom line question from a good friend and mentor of mine named Tyler Norton. He always comes back. He's one of the best strategic minds I've ever met. He always comes back to that word, relevance. How are we staying relevant to that customer? As their world is shifting, what is happening for them and how do we stay relevant? That's the essence of good strategy. But that critical thinking, maintaining relevance, and then the discipline or the routine built in to make sure we're doing that enough when the day-to-day fires are burning and we're heads down and delivering today's results. How do we make sure that longer term thing is still on track?
Yeah, I know that when I work with executives, the first thing I look at is, are they open mind or closed mind? Are they a growth mindset? And I'm not trying to be Carol Dweck with, mindset, the book Mindset, but because she didn't invent those concepts. I mean, just like Stephen Covey didn't do the 7 Habits. I mean, it's the stuff's out there. It's just like you said with Gino and EOS. I know a lot of people have been really successful with EOS, and I know some people that have struggled. The system works, but you have to make it adaptable to each, to particular environment. And so, the mindset is the piece that I have found working with high level executives, it seems like if you don't have them with a clear North Star, and when I go in and I do a discovery day strategy session and we sit down ahead of time, we ask everybody to write down what are their goals of the company, what are their vision. No one's, when you do it cold and they all do it, not one very rarely do they even come close, or they try to read it off this 16 paragraph thing on the wall, which no one can articulate anyway. So it's really about getting clarity and really and doing that. I think that the belief is so important, but then you also have to have the systems. And I think that that's been the challenge that I've seen, not only in my own organizations, but in the companies I've worked with, is they've done one thing really well for so many years, and they'll say that they have 15 years experience, but really they have 1 year they repeated 15 times, that they really haven't grown significantly over time. So as you look at ideas, where can people learn more? If they're listening to this now and they're saying, hey, I mean, obviously you can connect with him on LinkedIn. It's Brett Gilliland, Gilliland, and growwithelite.com. So again, this is for the podcast listeners. You can stop your car and rewind this and get that. But what types of solutions do you offer? And then who are your ideal clients? And again, for those of you listening, we're not doing a pitch here, but I want people to be able to know where they can get solutions. So one, I would say, who's your ideal client? And two, where should they start this journey with you if they were going to engage with you?
Yeah. So ideal client for us it's definitely a 7-figure business owner. They figured out the entrepreneurial journey at the beginning. They got this thing off the ground. They've become an elite entrepreneur, and now they're dealing with the challenges of scaling a business. That's our target. More recently, we decided we would narrow and serve marketing agencies in particular. I still have a hard time saying that because I know any 7-figure business owner who's going through this transition needs what we do. But as you will appreciate, Ford, if we don't narrow in on our message a little more tightly in our marketing, it doesn't land anywhere. So we're narrowing in on marketing companies in particular, but really it's any 7-figure business owner who's trying to make that transition. Where we help them is we help them get the clarity and alignment that you and I have been talking about.
Right.
So, and I want to say one thing about that. This is not an individual sport. It really is a team sport. You've heard me say that a few times, and roll the team, co-create with the team. But when we have business owners come and do one of our programs by themselves, it's way less likely that they'll go back and implement and do the things that we talk about. And the probability of success goes up exponentially when they bring at least one other person with them, ideally 2 or 3 of their key leaders, to come and do this work with them. This is a team sport. And when you co-create it with them, again, you sort of got half the battle won. They're ready to start charging up the hill when they've named the hill and they've talked about the strategy with you. And there's just a lot more clarity and alignment that way. So our programs, we've got one-time programs where we teach our method, and then we have an ongoing community for those who like working with us. We've got a place where they can interact with other 7-figure business owners, get ongoing coaching support from us. So that's how we do it.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, like we gave a proposal to a company last week. It was for a transformation of their digital footprint. And, when I went and met with them, I took my marketing director and I said, okay, let's see if we're getting the right people in the room. But I tried to get the decision maker and the owner in the room, because I know if you don't. And so I told my marketing director, look, we're going to go have this call. So we went, and it was a good meeting, but they weren't a decision maker. They weren't even really an influencer. They were told to just go get information. Well, at that point, there's no transfer of knowledge. If they can't make a buying decision based on that. And so, they said, well, we really want a proposal. And so I went back, filled out the proposal. And when I sent the proposal, I told my marketing director, I said, look, there's a 1 in 100. I'm a prosperity thinker and I'm positive. Don't get me wrong. I want to manifest good results. But I said, I find it very rarely, because we don't know what the real needs are, but yet they want a proposal. Now I had a choice. I could have easily just said no if I can't get the decision makers in the room, but I thought, okay, I'm just going to give them the proposal. But in the proposal, I clearly said, look, without identifying your needs in more detail, this would be the proposal. But we do have options that fit most reasonable budgets, but we would have to speak to you first. And then I was able to use AI to find out who the owners were. So I CC'd the owners on everything. So I didn't just rely on the operation guy to send in the proposal. And then I created a video. I sent a video. Hey, this is Ford from Prime Concepts Group. And so I got an email back from the owner. He's like, look, I love your follow through. I love that you were able to do this. He said, it's just outside my budget right now. And I said, I totally get that. And I told him, that's why it's so important to have you in the room to clarify what your needs are. So it's the same thing when you're trying to make a transformation in your organization, whether they go through my program or your program, or they see us speak or whatever. The more people that go through it, the more likelihood that it's going to be implemented. And when only the CEO goes through it, or a key executive, it's so hard for them to go back and sell the program or implement without having all those buy-ins. So for those of you watching and listening, I don't care what program you participate in, if you've got an executive team, and certainly if you're at a 7-figure business, you're going to have 2 or 3 key people at the top on whatever you call your leadership team, whether they have the title or not. And those are the people that all need to get in the room at the same time, because they're directing change. And one bad apple can spoil the whole bunch. So I think it's just, it's not a sales pitch to get more people to participate. It's, if you want to increase the chances of success, then you got to have more people involved, right?
That's right. And we're not selling a per person seat either. We just
say,
here's the price for you to participate. You can bring some of your team. We highly recommend you do.
Right.
That's it. We're not trying to make more on the seats there. We're just 100%. Trying to increase the effectiveness of the work that they're going to do.
Well, that's perfect. So we go live, everybody. This is Fordify Live. Join us Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Central on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook, and a few other channels. And we've been chatting today with expert Brett Gilliland from growwithelite.com. Brett, thank you so much for joining the program today.
It was a pleasure, Ford. Love what